little bit of an update, or in some ways a sort of non-update, about how congressional negotiations are going on that stimulus package. So it looks like Senator Mitch McConnell, of course, majority leader, says that the Senate could vote as early as this week to advance a scaled-down coronavirus relief bill, that skinny bill that we've been telling you about. We don't know exactly what would be in there. Very unlikely that Democrats will go along with this, so this will be more of a signaling bill than the kind of thing that actually will end up benefiting you in your lives. As far as we know, there is still essentially a complete impasse here. President Trump took some of the sort of pressure off by passing these executive orders that, as we have covered here, don't do a whole lot of anything, but kind of gave an appearance of the government at least doing something. And I think the Democrats are calculating that it's not really to their benefit to come to the negotiating table and get anything done and compromise here, because they think essentially economic fallout is good for them this fall.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what's happening. It's a horrific situation everywhere involved. You got Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer who are like, hey, let's let the country burn, man. Like burn, burn, burn until Joe Biden gets in there. And you got these Republicans who are de facto agree with them because they don't want to spend more money, right? I mean, they're like, actually, if we spend more money, we're going to lose votes because the conservatives will revolt. There ain't that many of them out there. I can tell you that. Go look at the polling. It's completely insane. And what is the real fallout here? Who actually pays for their lack of action? Well, we know that now. A new study out from PEW Research, really horrific. A majority of young adults in the United States live with their parents for the first time since the Great Depression. And that just goes back to something even worse in our society, which is that these kids and their parents know with relative certainty that their children will not be better off than they were. They know where they were at that time in their lives. They look at their kids unable to get married because they're saddled up with student debt or with other financial debt obligations that have been rife through the financial system and preyed upon young Americans. Kids unable to buy homes, no upward mobility, probably can't even buy a car. At the best extent that they're renting anything, now have been blown out for the second time in millennials' lives, 2008 and now this 2020 recession. Back at home, no capital, no opportunity. What are you supposed to do if you are in that type of situation? I mean, what type of society are you trying to build whenever your youngest and most supposedly the generation that's supposed to be the most prosperous is actually so much poorer than everybody else?
No, and if you look at the numbers, as we've shown here before, of the amount of wealth creation, not just in absolute terms, like you'd expect, okay, somebody, later in their career, they've had a chance to build wealth. But no, if you compare that generation with where they were when they were 25 or when they were 30 years old, there is a massive disparity here. And so we're talking about a majority of 18 to 29-year-olds living at home. And look, if you want to live with your parents, like, more power to you. Sure. If that's like your choice. But what we know is that this isn't a choice. This is a necessity for many, many people who would like to be able to strike out on their own, would like to be able to buy their own house and be able to start building their own wealth. And one thing that, that has really occurred to me too during this crisis is not only is this the generation that has been the hardest hit, the millennials and now the Gen Zers who are coming into their careers and starting to graduate out of college, but they are also the generations that are most shut out of the political process. So obviously the Republicans, don't really care, don't really do anything. On the Democratic side, you had one candidate in particular, Bernie Sanders, who was the overwhelming choice of young people, more so than, Barack Obama. There's a lot of mythology around how strongly young people supported Barack Obama. It was nothing in the primary compared to the overwhelming support of young people for Bernie Sanders. And then they had to watch as the Democratic Party moved heaven and earth to try to not only crush that movement, but give them nothing in return, just like a middle finger in the face of the specific policy issues that young people were organizing around. It's an incredibly dangerous and volatile situation when you have people who have been economically and financially crushed like this from the Great Recession, from the pandemic, from the, many people being sent overseas in the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War and all of that as well. When you have that kind of anger and depression and anxiety, and then you don't have a political outlet for it through a legitimate channel, That is an incredibly combustible situation. And something else that we've been talking a lot about here is in this pandemic, you've had, now Wall Street seems to be sort of tanking this morning and did a little bit last week, but overall you've had Wall Street doing great. You've had the big companies doing phenomenally well. And meanwhile, you have the real economy. You have people lining up for miles at food banks. You have millions of people who are worried about eviction and homelessness, who are struggling, who have lost their jobs, who are trying to keep body and soul together, who have spent all the stimulus money they received on expenses. So you have this very real K-shaped recovery taking shape. And this is a new CNBC article about exactly that, basically pointing out, look, the big guys are doing fine. And you have this completely uneven recovery where if you were doing well before, you're basically back to normal. And if you were struggling before, your fortunes have only gone down and down and down. And the big problem for that is not only the reality of it, but also that politicians don't pay attention to that bottom half of the economy. So if there's a true divergence of fortunes, they're unlikely to deliver for you.
That's what's going to happen. And it already has happened. It's the script for this entire future about how we argue about the economy. I can see it so clearly, which is that it's going to be just like 2008. You're going to have K-shaped recovery. You're going to have some top-line numbers that the Biden or the Trump administration can point to. And everybody else will be like, no, actually, underemployment, all that. But then when they get into power, they're only going to tout the top-line GDP numbers and forget about everybody at the bottom. The bottom half of America is used as a political pawn for the party whenever they're out of power. That's what the Republicans did about Obama. That's what the Democrats did under the initial days of Trump. But now whenever they come actually into power, they don't care about you. And it's just going to repeat over and over again until somebody tries to break the dam.
On that happy note, tomorrow on Rising, friend of the show, Zed Jelani, is going to join us. Trump campaign is going to give us a little update on the state of the race, ask him about those money woes.
Maybe their coffers. All right, well, remember to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our videos. And also don't forget to like and share as well. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Have a great day, guys.